What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't a lack of motivation, but the actual, physical wiring of your brain? Every single year, millions of people promise themselves that this is it. This is the year they'll finally change. You know the feeling, right? You buy the books, you start the workout plan, you wake up at 5 a.m. For 2 days, you feel completely unstoppable. And then, usually right around day 3, everything just falls apart. You hit the snooze button, you skip the gym, and before you know it, you're right back exactly where you started. Why does this happen to us? Welcome to today's Explainer. By the end of our time together, you're going to understand exactly why discipline disappears. And more importantly, you'll discover the brain science of how to make it last forever.
So why do we quit after just 2 days? Well, the reason we fail actually has almost nothing to do with a lack of willpower, and it certainly isn't because you're lazy. There is a very real mechanical culprit holding us back. You see, the people you admire, the ones who seamlessly wake up early, run 10 miles, and read a book a week, they aren't constantly hyping themselves up. They're not just gritting their teeth. They've simply tapped into a hidden architecture in their mind. And once you see how this architecture works, you literally cannot unsee it. So let's dive into exactly what's happening under the hood.
Section 1. The myth of willpower. For decades, we've been fed this massive lie. We're told that if we just push harder, if we just want it badly enough, we'll finally succeed. But the discipline we admire in others, it isn't magic. It's just a biological reality. We carry around this incredibly painful myth that quitting is a moral failing or some kind of deep character flaw. But here's the scientific reality. Your brain physically doesn't distinguish between a good habit and a bad habit. It doesn't judge. It just connects dots to make your behaviors easier and more automatic. Your habits are not a reflection of your internal character. They are simply the output of a biological machine. So if we want to fix the machine, we need to know what part of the brain is actually running the show. Deep inside your cranium is this ancient golf ball-sized structure called the basal ganglia. Every animal has one. It evolved with one primary purpose: to automate our lives so we don't get completely overwhelmed by making basic decisions. Just imagine if, every single time you walk down a trail, you had to consciously pause, use intense brain power, and deeply analyze whether to pick up an apple or pick up a rock to put in your mouth. You would be so exhausted by basic survival decisions that you'd never accomplish anything else. So your basal ganglia steps in. It takes those repetitive decisions completely off your plate, turning them into automatic background reflexes.
And it does this a lot more than you might think. A staggering 45% of everything you do every single day is an entirely unconscious habit. Think about that for a second. What you eat for lunch, how you speak to your family, when you reach for your phone, how you spend your money. Almost half of your entire waking life is operating completely on autopilot. You might think you're in the driver's seat making conscious choices, but your basal ganglia is actually running the script. But here's where most people get it wrong. If you want to rewrite that script, you can't just yell at the machine. You have to understand the specific language your brain uses to write it in the first place.
Which brings us to Section 2, Inside the Habit Loop. If you want to build lasting discipline, we have to look under the hood and see exactly how the brain wires these automatic behaviors together. It's not just random chaos in there. It's a very predictable, rigid, 3-step pattern. First, there's the cue. This is the trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode. Then comes the routine. This is the actual behavior or action you take. And finally, the reward. That's the feeling of satisfaction you get at the end. When your brain sees a specific cue and gets a specific reward enough times, it locks that routine into place. It makes things like picking up a sugary donut when you're stressed, or instinctively tying your running shoes when your alarm goes off, completely effortless. And this brings us to the golden rule of habit change. This is the one mistake that silently destroys progress for millions of well-intentioned people. When we want to improve, we naturally try to completely extinguish our bad habits. We declare, "I am never eating sugar again." But that old cue and reward loop, it still physically lives inside your brain's wiring. You can't just delete it. One day your mother-in-law visits, you get incredibly stressed out, boom, there's your cue, and your brain immediately starts screaming for the reward of comfort food. You cannot extinguish the loop with sheer force. To actually succeed, you must keep the old cue, keep the old reward, but insert a totally new routine in the middle. But to pull that off, you have to uncover what you are actually craving.
Let's move to Section 3, Decoding Your Hidden Cravings.
Behind every single habit is an invisible force driving the loop. It's a neurological craving. And the crazy thing is, most of the time, we're completely blind to what we're actually craving. We think we want a cigarette, a cookie, or just one more hour of endlessly scrolling on our phones. But the brain is actually searching for something much deeper. Luckily, almost all of our cues fall into one of 5 distinct categories: a specific time of day, a certain place, the people around us, a specific emotion, or a preceding behavior. The author Charles Duhigg actually shared a fascinating story about this. He realized he was gaining weight from a terrible habit of going to the cafeteria and eating a chocolate chip cookie every single afternoon. He tried using sheer willpower. He even left sticky notes on his computer monitor saying no more cookies, but he failed every single day. So he decided to become a detective of his own life. He tracked those 5 categories and quickly realized the craving always hit at exactly 3:30 p.m. The time of day was his cue. Next, he had to figure out his reward. Was it the sugar rush? Was he actually hungry? Did he just need a break from his screen? What happened next completely changed everything. Through a bit of trial and error, he realized the craving was never actually about the cookie at all. At 3:30 p.m., he was just feeling bored and isolated. The cookie was simply a convenient excuse to ride the elevator down to the cafeteria and gossip with his coworkers for 10 minutes. The true reward his brain wanted was social interaction, so he just changed the routine. At 3:30 p.m., instead of going to the cafeteria to eat, he simply stood up, walked over to a colleague's desk, chatted for 10 minutes, and went back to work. And just like that, the cookie craving vanished completely. By diagnosing the true, hidden reward, he was able to permanently rewire a deeply ingrained habit.
But what if you just try to tough it out? If you just try to ignore a craving, here is exactly what happens in your brain. Let's say your cue is walking past the office break room, and you see a bright pink box of donuts sitting there. Now, 10 seconds before you saw that box, you weren't even hungry. But the exact moment you register the cue, your brain vividly anticipates the sweet reward. If you try to aggressively use willpower to just walk past those donuts without satisfying that anticipation, your dopamine levels literally plummet. It registers in your brain as a physical drop. Neurological scans show it looks incredibly similar to a small sense of depression. Your brain essentially feels punished. And this right here is exactly why relying on sheer willpower feels so emotionally exhausting and painful.
Section 4. The power of keystone habits.
So, if willpower is a trap, how do we actually build discipline without all the pain? We look for one single change that creates a massive, automatic ripple effect across your entire life. In psychology, these are known as keystone habits. Now, the absolute most crucial part of this is the number 1. You do not need to change everything about your life overnight. In fact, trying to overhaul your diet, fix your sleep schedule, start a heavy workout program, and boost your work productivity all on the exact same Monday morning is a guaranteed recipe for failure. You only need to pick one habit, but it has to be the right one. It needs to be a habit that feels irrationally scary or significant to you, something that makes you hesitate and think, I don't know if I'm the kind of person who can actually pull that off.
Because when you do pull it off, something magical happens. When someone who has never exercised suddenly commits to just jogging for a few minutes every single morning, a massive domino effect occurs. Studies showed that these people subconsciously start eating healthier lunches. They suddenly start using their credit cards less. They procrastinate less at work. They even do their chores earlier in the day and sleep better at night. Why does this happen? Because going for that one difficult morning run convinces the part of your brain that monitors your behavior that your actual identity has fundamentally shifted. Your brain observes your actions and says, oh, I guess we are a disciplined person now, and disciplined people don't max out their credit cards or eat junk food for lunch. Completing just one keystone habit automatically upgrades every other area of your life.
Section 5. Believing you can change. Understanding the mechanics and the habit loops is incredibly powerful. But inevitably, you are going to face a day where the systems fail. A day where you are insanely stressed, exhausted, and your motivation has completely evaporated. To keep running when life gets that hard, you need a spark. And that spark is belief. Belief is a lot like a muscle. If we don't actively practice it, our ability to believe that true change is possible gets atrophied. Look at the massive success of groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. The famous 12 steps aren't grounded in clinical, lab-tested neuroscience. They were written by a man sitting on his bed. Yet they have saved millions of lives. Why? Because the very core of the program forces people to practice the radical belief that they can change, even when it feels totally impossible. When you step into a room and say, I believe a higher power, or even just the people in this room can help me, you are actively flexing and rebuilding that atrophied muscle of belief.
And this brings us to one of the most beautiful and profound truths about human psychology. Belief is a group activity. We learn to believe in ourselves by first seeing it reflected in the eyes of others. When you hit a moment of weakness, when you're staring down a craving, or seriously considering skipping that run you promised yourself you'd take, leaning on a community creates a powerful web of social expectations that physically carries you through. The people who ultimately succeed in life aren't the ones who are just perfectly strong all the time. They're the ones who, in their absolute darkest moments, have a community or a friend who turns to them and says, "I believe in you, even when you can't believe in yourself."
So, what does this all mean for you today? The most absolutely crucial takeaway from this explainer is this: stop waiting for the perfect burst of motivation. The people you admire aren't somehow more motivated or genetically superior to you. They've simply wired their basal ganglia to automatically take action when motivation inevitably fades. Discipline isn't about feeling ready. It is quite simply a mechanical habit just waiting to be built. Map out your cues and rewards today, pick one keystone habit that legitimately scares you, and lean on someone who believes in your potential. So what is the one small routine you're going to change tomorrow morning? If you enjoyed this explainer and found it valuable, please take a moment to like this explainer and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us create more content like this. And if you want to dive even deeper into these life-changing ideas, check out the full playlist linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next explainer.